Hello, from Wonder Media Network, I'm Jenny Kaplan, and this is Womanica. This month we're talking about women of the wheel, icons who turned motion into momentum and spun their legacies on spokes, skates, and potter's wheels. These women harnessed the power of the axle, pushing their crafts and professions forward through their works and lives. Today we're talking about a woman who spun complex textile designs full of contrasting colors and dizzying patterns out of simple tools: her hands, a loom, wool, and an expressive imagination. Her male colleagues in the German Bauhaus art movement may have underestimated her, but in the end, she became one of its most influential artists. Please welcome Gunta Stözl. Gunta was born in Munich, Germany in 1897. Her father was a school principal and teacher who recognized and encouraged his daughter's free spirit and artistic expression. Gunta's early diaries, which she began keeping as a teenager, reveal her penchant for adventure. She especially liked taking trips to the Alps to climb, either alone or with a friend. In later photographs, you can see a relic from a youthful mountaineering injury. There on her forehead is a scar. Her diaries also demonstrate her early inclination toward visual arts. Sketches of mountains, farming, and village life appear throughout their pages. In 1913, Gunta began her studies at an art school in Munich, where she studied painting, ceramics, art history, and made countless more sketches. But the start of World War I interrupted her studies, and Gunta set aside her paints and pencils to serve as a Red Cross nurse. Gunta's strong, determined nature was amplified by life on the front. In a photograph from the era, you can spot Gunta by her straight, commanding posture and direct stare. She reportedly took a no-nonsense approach to her nursing job. Once, concerned about the practices of a careless doctor, Gunta had him removed from the hospital. All the while, Gunta kept sketching in her diary, keeping a visual record of the places she saw during the war. When it ended in 1918, Gunta resumed her studies in Munich. By then, she encountered something new and strange that would change her life. A small leaflet with an abstract cathedral on its cover, containing a manifesto. It began, "The ultimate goal of all art is the building." The manifesto was written by the architect Walter Gropius. He had just founded an art school called the Bauhaus School. His vision was for this new school to break from tradition, to unite crafts with fine arts so that they could build toward practical and beautiful works. With this leaflet, he hoped to recruit artists who felt called toward his vision, and Gunta definitely did, especially the part that declared there was no difference between the sexes in the arts. At a time when schools were often segregated by gender, if they let women in at all, the promise of an academic institution founded on gender equality was incredibly powerful. Gunta convinced her father to let her drop her studies in Munich, even though she was in her last year, and join Gropius's new and untested school. The following fall, when she was 22 years old, Gunta arrived at the Bauhaus. The school building was dilapidated, with not much equipment or even chairs, so at first, many students sat on the floor to take their lessons. Despite the unusual environment, Gunta dove into her studies, relishing the opportunity to try new techniques and mediums. Within months, her style began to evolve as her sketches became less pastoral and more modern. She even thought she would go on to specialize in wall painting and murals. But by the spring of her first year, something shifted. She'd been engaged to a fellow student and painter, but the wedding was called off. Feeling untethered and uninspired, she considered leaving the Bauhaus. Then, Walter Gropius offered her an opportunity. He was planning a women's workshop at Bauhaus, which eventually would focus on weaving, and he wanted her to help lead it. The project proved to be a helpful distraction. Gunta wrote, "I was really very happy to have some responsibility. At the very moment the Bauhaus was sinking for me, a strong hand held me fast in a firmly linked chain. Now I have the feeling that I can no longer separate my life and my destiny from the Bauhaus." We know now that Gropius's request wasn't just a recognition of Gunta's potential. In their private meetings, the all-male masters at the school had been discussing their worries about admitting too many women. They feared that the Bauhaus would come to be seen as amateur, a place for frivolity rather than a rigorous institution. So despite the promise of gender equality in their manifesto, they funneled the women into one workshop and eventually had them focus on weaving, which was seen as a feminine craft, as opposed to areas like architecture and sculpture, which were associated with male intellect. To make matters worse, the main master in charge of the workshop was a disinterested male instructor who had at one point vowed to never weave a single thread, tie a single knot, or make a single textile design. But Gunta was not aware of this intentional undermining. She just got to work, creating an environment where other women could experiment and express themselves without the burdensome oversight of the men. Gunta's own work flourished in the workshop. Day after day at the loom, she experimented with wool dyeing and different ways of weaving innovative geometric designs. Over time, she developed a highly technical style. Her rugs and wall hangings were visually arresting, kaleidoscopic mosaics of colors, textures, and interconnecting patterns. Under her unofficial leadership, the weaving workshop became the most lucrative venture for the school. Gunta and the women she worked alongside developed their own modernist theory of weaving, highlighting the art form's worthiness for serious study. Eventually, in 1927, Gunta was appointed the official master of the workshop. By then, she was beloved by her students, who called her the Weaving Mother. But this rosy period would not last for long. By 1930, the nationalism that had been spreading throughout Germany reached the Bauhaus, creating anti-Semitic political pressure within its walls. By then, Gunta was married to a Jewish architect. Their marriage forced Gunta to give up her German citizenship and made her a political target of the Nazi Party. When she found a swastika painted on her door one day, she resigned from her post at the school. The Bauhaus school would be forced to close due to political pressure just a few years later. Gunta and her husband fled to Switzerland. Gunta continued to develop her textile practice as an academic and as a businesswoman with her own studio. Her work has been exhibited in museums across the world, and to this day, her singular style remains influential for contemporary artists. Gunta died in Zurich in 1983. She was 86 years old. All month, we're talking about women of the wheel. For more information, find us on Facebook and Instagram at Womanica Podcast. Special thanks to Liz Kaplan, my favorite sister and co-creator. Talk to you tomorrow.